God exist? It's easy to miss the significance of this question, for all of us have heard it many times. It's been discussed and debated for centuries. However, we should not gloss over this question, for it is the most important question to be answered in our human experience. As you will see today, it is the question that must be answered before all other questions can be answered. I must first clarify that I affirm Christian theism specifically, and it's Christian theism that I'll argue for as a unit or system of thought. Throughout history, there have been innumerable claims about various deities or concepts of deities. I should be clear that today I am not arguing for general theism. That is to say, my argument is not for a God in general, but for the God of the Old and New Testaments. The reason for this is that I find other notions of God to be indefensible, leading to a worldview that is internally incoherent and undermines rational thought. Psalm 14, verse 1 says, "The fool has said in his heart, there is no God." Christians are often criticized and considered foolish for their faith. However, the Bible says that it's the unbeliever that is foolish, and I will show you why. Today, I will argue for the existence of God from the impossibility of the contrary. This is often referred to as the transcendental proof of God's existence. What this means is that it is impossible for God not to exist. If it is impossible for God not to exist, he therefore must exist. I will cover two areas of human experience that absolutely require the existence of the Christian God: moral absolutes and the laws of logic. I will show you that in these two areas, rejecting Christian theism results in utter irrationality. There are many other areas that we could discuss, all with the same conclusion. However, in the interest of time, I must focus on these two. I must point out that philosophically speaking, it is only necessary for me to show in one area that God must exist for my argument to be valid. The famous German philosopher Immanuel Kant is widely respected for his book entitled Critique of Pure Reason. In this book, Kant explains that there are certain truths or ideas which are necessary for other truths or ideas to exist. He called them preconditions. If the precondition of a truth does not exist, then the truth itself cannot exist. It's sort of like baking a cake without any ingredients. The ingredients are the precondition, but they're not the cake itself. Yet without the ingredients, the cake cannot be made. I maintain that God is the necessary precondition for moral absolutes and the laws of logic. So, if moral absolutes and the laws of logic are the cake that we want to bake, then God is the necessary ingredient. Denying God means that we have no ingredients, and not even Paula Deen can bake a cake without ingredients. When one wishes to deny the existence of God, they commit themselves to a view of reality that cannot justify certain ideas and concepts that they themselves use and depend on for a rational experience. For instance, everyone has experienced the feeling of indignation for a certain crime or injustice. Hitler's Germany is regarded as one of the most heinous events against humanity in all of history. Nearly every reasonable person considers Saddam Hussein's gassing of almost 5,000 Kurds repulsive. History is replete with example after example of humans behaving badly. The question that one will eventually be forced to answer is, what is the basis for judging these types of events or behaviors as being either right or wrong? After all, Hitler believed with all sincerity that his actions were right and justified. Who are we to condemn him? Why is it not just a matter of my opinion versus Hitler's opinion? I submit that without God, it is only a matter of opinion. The reason for this is that God provides for us the necessary precondition of moral absolutes. Moral absolutes provide the only means for objectively condemning an action as being either right or wrong. Without them, everyone decides what's right in his own eyes, which leads to corruption and anarchy. In an atheistic universe, what objective standard of morality is available? Let's consider one answer that is often given by atheists. It is society as a whole that agrees on moral standards. With this answer, we see that morality is merely a convention of man, and and cannot be applied universally. Murder may be allowed in one culture and disallowed in another. A society can have a faction of people who leave to start their own society with different standards. This makes morality relative and arbitrary, not objective and absolute. There are many other answers to this question, but all of them undermine the possibility for any ultimate standard, and all of them lead to similar arbitrariness. As we can see, God provides for us the necessary precondition for moral absolutes. So if moral absolutes are the cake that we want to bake, then God is the necessary ingredient. Moving on, the laws of logic are employed by everyone every day. The results they yield are almost invariably taken for granted as being true, yet the laws themselves are rarely, if ever, examined for truth. Laws in general, and laws of logic in particular, are abstract, universal, invariant entities. By abstract, I mean that they are immaterial in nature, a concept not extended into space. By universal, I mean that they apply at every time and in every situation. And by invariant, I mean that they do not change depending on the circumstances. Laws can only be accounted for in a universe that contains a supernatural being that transcends this world and governs it personally. A world without God can only have matter in motion. Since laws are neither matter nor motion, they cannot be accounted for in a universe that contains only matter in motion. This creates quite a dilemma for one who wishes to deny the existence of God. You see, if he uses logic to deny God, his very use of logic actually affirms what he is denying. To quote Dr. Greg Bahnsen, in his famous debate with public debate with famous atheist Dr. Gordon Stein, quote, "The proof of the Christian worldview is that the denial of it leads to irrationality. That is, without the Christian God, you cannot prove anything," end quote. Once again, we see that laws in general and laws of logic in particular are provided by the existence of the Christian God. Without God, there is no precondition, thus they cannot exist. So, if laws of logic are the cake that we want to bake, then God is the necessary ingredient. What we see here are two very critical areas of human experience that are rendered completely irrational outside of the Christian worldview. Just imagine waking up tomorrow and trying to function without using moral absolutes or the laws of logic. In 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 20, the Apostle Paul calls rhetorically, "Where is the wise man? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world?" In the final analysis, we see that we can answer Paul's question. By rejecting Christian theism, rationality is impossible. Therefore, we can conclude that the answer to God's existence lies in the impossibility of the contrary. In other words, it is impossible for God not to exist. God has, in fact, made foolish the wisdom of the world. Thank you.